Welcome to Tehillah Talks, everyone. My name is James, and this is our 4th episode. Welcome.
Number 4.
How's everybody doing?
Yeah, doing well, James.
Doing
How
well?
are you doing?
Having a good day? Having a good day. And we are here to interview and have a discussion with some very special guests, as you can see, that are here from the Dream Center, from Change is Good. And why we are doing this is because at Tehillah, we are beginning to have an arm of the ministry here that is focused on justice and social justice and serving in our city. And we have an amazing parable that we want to discuss that relates to everything that these two powerhouses are doing. So without further ado, why don't you guys introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and we'll begin the dialogue.
That's great.
Alrighty, well, my name's Rachel, and I, like James said, work at the Calgary Dream Center. I have 2 roles there. I'm the CEO's executive assistant,
Wow.
and I'm also the strategy manager for
my
our social
goodness.
enterprise department.
You're legit.
What
So-
does strategy manager
yeah, exactly.
mean?
What do you manage?
Like on a technical level. I'm just curious.
No,
like,
seriously.
I'm basically,
Like, is this like a risk strategy? Or like,
it
Kind
sounds like a really amazing title. That's why I'm curious.
exactly.
yeah.
How it plays
I'm
out.
just a youth pastor. God. Boring.
But if we turned it into like youth
Strategic
analysis
development.
yeah, exactly. Then all of a sudden, boom.
100%
Yeah.
legit.
Sorry, Rachel, back to you.
Oh, it's all good. Basically, I do a lot of planning.
Nice.
I do
Okay.
a lot
Cool.
of research
Oh, great.
of current markets, of what's
Wow.
selling, what's not,
Wow.
different ways other nonprofits are bringing in revenue. And then I basically compile all that information and I make a plan for each social enterprise
amazing.
with the team.
Jeez.
But
That's
yeah.
amazing.
That's fantastic.
And
That's
then
incredible.
Heather here handles all of the operations, and I'll let her explain a little bit more what she does.
Operations handler.
Yes. So I am the operations manager of social enterprise at the Calgary Dream Center,
Wow.
which is a very cool and fun title, but it basically just means that I run day-to-day logistics of any business opportunities that are happening at the Dream Center. So we currently have Change is Good, which we will get into, and then we also have our wood shop.
Wow.
And so, yeah, just running operations. And basically, Rachel structures my life, and I run. So
Hey,
that's
I like it.
That's our partnership.
Nice.
Is
I wish I had someone to
Rachel's-
structure my life. That'd
Honestly,
be
it's
great.
amazing, and you should have a Rachel in your life because
Rachel, can you be my assistant? Just, you know.
Strategy manager.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
exactly.
All right,
Strat-
James, you're going to
Hey,
get up at
hey,
7
hey.
a.m.
Strategy manager.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Not assistant.
Watch yourself.
Yeah, assistant, that's like a bit degrading these days, isn't it? But
It could be.
I don't know.
Yeah, so that's basically what we do as a team at the Dream Center.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the Dream Center
Yeah.
and then a little bit more about Change is Good? Is that okay?
Yeah, so the Calgary Dream Center started 18 years ago
Wow.
with 12 clients
Wow.
in a hotel that actually was a strip club. And
Wow.
yeah, and just a very seedy place. I won't go into any more
It
detail
had hot
about
tubs in
that.
the
It
basement.
had great lights.
Yeah.
Strip club
So-
and hot tubs in the basement, I think, paints an accurate enough picture.
Yeah.
I don't think we need any more than that for sure.
And it's not like that anymore.
Of course not. Yeah.
So it's now a treatment recovery center as well as a transitional housing center. We have
Wow.
371 clients,
Amazing.
Wow.
49 properties, and we house both men and women, most who are on a journey of recovery. So
Jeez.
it's grown a lot. It's still growing. A social enterprise was birthed about 2 years ago, started with a wood shop. We introduced a cafe, which we had to close down just due to COVID.
Thanks a lot, COVID.
It was really good, and it will be good again soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then we just recently started Change is Good.
Just
So-
before we go to Change is Good, when you say clients
Yeah.
in recovery, can you just give us a little detail about maybe what that looks like, the kinds of clients you have and the people who are coming in, for those who maybe don't know?
For sure. So one thing we say a lot is that recovery doesn't have just one image. So you might picture that person on the street with a beard or
Hey.
begging with a cup.
Someone that looks kind of like James.
Yeah, with a cup.
Thanks, guys.
But that's not true. It can be someone in a corporate life. Some people
Yeah.
are a lot better at masking it. What rock bottom looks like for everyone is completely different. So we definitely say that there's really no discrimination in regards to where people are at. So we have a recovery program. It's 49 days for men. We also have a post-recovery program we've just started for them just because 49 days isn't really long enough.
Of course.
Some have very supportive families and communities they can enter back into, so they might not need that extra bit of support. But those that do have the option to enter into another program called Genesis,
Wow.
which lasts 6 months.
Wow, that's amazing.
to a year. And then we also have a transitional housing program. So even if they don't want more treatment, they can still stay housed with case management.
Of course, yeah.
And then we also have a women's post-recovery program and low-cost housing and then community housing.
That's fantastic.
So it kind of
Jeez.
acts as a phase 3 program. So
Yeah.
they might go through treatment and then they might go into transitional housing or post-treatment, and then they often will go into community housing with the goal of graduating them back into society.
That's
Wow.
fantastic. So when you say client, where my mind immediately goes to like drugs and alcohol. Would gambling be part of that as well, or is it primarily drugs and alcohol? Other things maybe?
It's primarily drugs and
Okay.
alcohol, but we have had the odd person come in and want to deal with food addiction
Okay, great.
or pornography or gambling. So
Wow.
we definitely welcome those people because, I mean, really the root of it is all the same.
Yeah, of
People are
course.
hurting. And so we say that addiction is really, it's just the fruit that you see, but the issue is a lot deeper.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so great. So Heather, can you tell us a little bit about, 2 years ago, Social Enterprise started. That's been with you.
Yep.
And then more recently, Change is Good. Can you tell us about that?
Yep. So I would say that the social enterprise leg of the Calgary Dream Center started with our CEO, Jim Moore, who's like a massive business-minded person.
Boss.
Yeah, he just like is like really thinks so entrepreneurial, and his whole history and his career has been in business. So he really started that extension, and we just luckily got to jump on board.
Cool.
And then during COVID-19, so we had our cafe that was running,
Yeah,
and
which
then,
was amazing, by the way.
Yeah,
It was actually
so
good coffee.
It was
too.
great.
yeah,
Shout out.
Monogram. Hello.
Hey.
Anyway, so we had to shut that down, and then we, had this time period where, to be honest, we just had a lot of time on our hands, and out of that, Change is Good was born. So Change is Good started in mine and Rachel's office as a bit of a initiative for us to get more of like a millennial donor base involved in what we're doing at the Calgary Dream Center.
Oh, great, cool.
And because we both see, like fashion and sustainability as being very rightfully current
course.
right now,
Yeah.
we thought, why don't we start this brand as kind of like a trial project for a thrift store eventually?
Yeah, fantastic.
Love
And it's,
thrifting.
yeah, so do I. And it's honestly really exploded over the past few months. We've been operating since June. And like I said, we started it as our own kind of thing to just raise a little bit of money, kind of test the waters, start a little bit of a brand. And so far to date, I actually just checked yesterday, and we've raised about $3,200 for the Calgary Dream Center,
Come on. Amazing.
which is great.
All
And
from people's stuff.
yeah, so we basically just, and we started with women, and we got women to donate clothing to us. We put it online. We do only e-commerce, and yeah,
smart.
we've been able to raise some money for the Calgary Dream Center. And then we're actually going to be going underneath the Calgary Dream Center as a social enterprise. So we are
Cool.
officially part of the Calgary Dream Center. So we'll have all of that support from them as well.
Amazing.
I feel like it's sort of self-explanatory, but maybe people are listening and they're unfamiliar with the terminology social enterprise.
Oh,
Can
yeah.
you just maybe explain that for people for whom that might be new?
Yes.
Normally, I'm asking him this question, like, "Whoa, what does that word mean?" For all us lay people, help us out. So,
Yeah, honestly, I was introduced to it about 7 years ago. I worked overseas at a social enterprise, and before then I had zero idea of what that meant. But basically, it just means a business that's running for profit. We're here to make money, but we also have a social initiative. And social enterprises can look really different. Some of them are employment-based, so they offer employment services to people who maybe struggle to find employment.
Yeah.
Some are profit, so we make money and donate it back, or some are kind of a blend. Some are environmental social enterprises. They can look so different, but basically it's just a business that has a social cause. So for us, we have a business. It's a thrift store, and our social cause is the Calgary Dream Center and addiction recovery.
Right. So it's for
Amazing.
profit, but then it's also channeling that money back into social
Exactly.
betterment,
Exactly.
communities, the world,
Absolutely.
of course.
And for us, the goal is profit, obviously, and also employment services. So they can be a blend. And I think for us, for Change is Good, we are hoping that we'll be able to make money and employ clients.
That's fantastic.
That's
So I'll tell you a
amazing.
little bit about what we've been doing here as a part of this series, as we've talked about justice. We're really happy to have you here. We're going to get more into Change is Good and the Calgary Dream Center sort of as we move through this conversation. But we've been having conversations about the parables of Jesus, partially because we as a community have sort of felt convinced that we've sort of misunderstood what Jesus is doing when he tells stories. Jesus is, as N.T. Wright would say, he's campaigning for the kingdom of God, or God's empire, that could be translated, or God's government, like we were talking about last week, that Jesus is actually talking about what it looks like when the kingdom breaks in on earth as it is in heaven. So most often when we read parables, we're looking for like the moralistic lesson, and that's not necessarily wrong, but it's not often what Jesus is doing, or we're looking for what does this say about salvation or heaven, usually. And that's also often not what Jesus is doing. And even with the parable that I'm going to read in a second, we'll see Jesus is saying, this is what the kingdom of God is like. And since we believe that the kingdom is present here now through God's people, we believe that Jesus is talking about what it looks like to be his people in the world. And that really does center both in these parables, but also in the ministry of Jesus around justice and around social enterprises. So I'm going to read the parable, and then maybe we can launch into a conversation about what it is that Jesus is doing here and how that interacts with who you are and what you're doing. Cool. So I'm going to read from Matthew chapter 20. I'm going to start at verse 1. We sort of know this as the parable of the laborers and the vineyard. That's what we would call it typically. So Matthew chapter 20, if you have a Bible, verse 1, Jesus says, "For heaven's kingdom is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. When he had agreed with the laborers for a denarius for the day, he sent them into his vineyard. And he went out at about the third hour and saw others standing idle in the marketplace. And to those people, he said, 'You also go into the vineyard, and whatever is just, I'm going to pay you that.' And so they also went." Verse 5, "And again, he went out at about the 6th hour and the 9th hour, and he did the same thing." That is to say, he found people and invited them to come work. Verse 6, "And at about the 11th hour, he went and found others standing around. And he said to them, 'Why have you been standing idle here, doing nothing all day long?' And they said to him, 'Because nobody hired us.' And he said to them, 'All right, you go into the vineyard too.' Verse 8, "When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, 'Call the laborers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last group to the first.' When those hired about the 11th hour came, each one received a denarius. When those hired first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also received a denarius." So everybody got the same amount of money. "When they received it, they grumbled at the landowner, saying, 'These last men worked only 1 hour, but they made equal to us, who have borne the burden and the scorching heat of the day.' Verse 14, "But he answered and said to them, 'Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius a day? Take what is yours and go. But if I wish to give to this last man the same as you, I can. Is it not lawful for me to do what I wish with what is mine? Or is your eye envious because I am generous?'" And then this line we know so well, verse 16, "So the last shall be first, and the first shall be last."
Wow. I wish I was one of those guys that came in at like 5 o'clock and just got paid the same. That'd be legit.
Just rolling in at 4 p.m. and
I know.
working for an hour and getting a day's wage.
But what a master, though. Jeez.
Yeah.
Nice guy.
Yes.
Wealthy, apparently.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. So I wonder then, when you hear the parable, each of you, like what stands out to you or what comes to mind when you hear the words of Jesus from this perspective of Jesus is talking about what it looks like for us to be his people?
For me, the thing that initially pops into my mind is always whenever I listen to this text preached or whatever, read it, I would assume that it was like, oh, it's this person that's serving their life for serving Jesus with their life for
Right.
80 years
Yeah.
is the person at 8 a.m. And then the person that gets in on the skin of their teeth in the last on their deathbed, they also get into heaven. So I always assumed that this referred to people getting into heaven and their heavenly
Yeah, like eternal
reward.
salvation. I think that's often the way people read this parable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interestingly.
Yeah, which, I mean, again, and one thing we've been discussing is that not always is there one definitive way that this parable can be interpreted. So, but that's how I hear it. But I'm now realizing, like, oh, it's actually what is supposed to look like here on earth. But, I mean, what do you guys think?
Well, I think one way I like to define social enterprise is kingdom business.
Nice.
Especially in our organization, like Heather mentioned, our CEO actually has a ministry background and a business background, which is similar to my own. So I think being able to marry the two and know that they don't have to be separate from one another
of course.
is pretty special. And that's what I see illustrated in this. They're looking at the value of the person, giving them equal opportunity despite the sweat equity that they've put in, which is something we do as well. And that's our dream and our goal, especially because with each client, a lot of them haven't been employed for a while or they've been in treatment. And then when they try and go find a job, they have to explain to that potential employer why they've been away or what they've been doing. And then they end up having to open up about their addiction, which can sometimes bring a feeling of shame, I think. And it also can create a barrier between them and that potential employer.
Right, so the employer then is sort of maybe weirded out, and they think, I don't really want to hire this person based on where they've been, so to
past.
speak.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they don't trust them.
Yeah.
Right.
So our goal is to speak value into that client by giving them opportunities to volunteer or employment in our social enterprises so that they can fill their resumes with skills, with opportunities. And so that when they go, the employer might see, yes, they were in a treatment program, but these are the things that they've been up to, and they were trusted by the organization that they were with to do all of these things. So
Wow.
Fantastic.
And I think that to what you're saying, that's a way now that my eyes are being opened to this passage a bit more, where it's like, oh, the master is actually, it's not just necessarily like a salvation thing, but it could be here where it's like this person, you know, maybe they did have a gap, maybe they did have a history, maybe they did have a past, but they still get an equal wage or an equal opportunity.
Correct.
To then still sow into society, have a job, work, provide for a family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Where oftentimes we're like the other employees in this story. They're like, hey, I worked way harder than that person. Why am I not getting paid that more than that person? I deserve more, which is so like our human nature.
Yeah.
But opposite in the story, where the master's like, actually, no, I'm going to give you an equal opportunity to work.
Yeah, that's great.
Really.
Heather, what about you? What stands out when you hear this story?
Yeah, I mean, I read it over, and I mean, obviously, I've read it before, but I read it over, and honestly, it's kind of a simple thing that came to my mind, but just, yeah, equality and opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think that's why when I started my kind of like journey, whatever, in social enterprise, that is what attracted me the most. Was I actually love so many parts of what I do, but the biggest piece I love, and the biggest piece that's been so rewarding to me, having worked in a few different contexts, is the equal opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, I've worked as a manager of multiple people who have struggled with addiction in their life, and I can say they do not disappoint. And like, I just think people might think it's a risk to hire someone who's an addict, but I can tell you they'll work harder. They will say, I'm sorry, faster.
Right.
They are incredible. And I just think the opportunity for them to show what they can do is so valuable. And the opportunity to just become more and more confident is another piece that I love about social enterprise and about opportunity.
Yeah.
I just think I've seen the transformation in people when they walk through the doors, their first job, their first day on their job after they've been through the recovery program.
Right.
And I've seen transformation in people,
Wow.
and it's the most powerful thing to
Right.
see what can come from just that seed of opportunity.
Yeah.
And from that seed of equality. I just think there's so much that can come out of it. And yeah, that's why I love this concept and this
Yeah.
parable.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's really, really powerful.
So I have a question then. Why do you think humanity or employers or whomever, whatever, why do we have the tendency to be like the other employees that just point the finger and like not give other people opportunity, not celebrate other people's opportunity to then work or then whatever? Why do you think we always end up pointing the fingers or not giving that? Or in your guys' experience, have you seen, or yours, or?
I would say it's ignorance. I would say,
Wow,
actually,
go there.
I would say that for myself, I'll use myself as an example. I've actually never really come into contact with people who have struggled with addiction before I started working in social enterprise.
of course.
And before I guess really the turning point for me is when I met my husband, who's really involved.
Shout out AJ. Sup?
Yes. My
know
husband,
him.
who is incredibly involved with, he used to live in Vancouver and he used to live in East Hastings. So he used to come into contact with people who struggle with addiction so often and had a real
He's got
heart
some
for
stories, man.
that. He has some insane stories, like people climbing through the rafters and like just lots of different things. But just really opened my eyes, and his family's been really involved in like homeless and ministries in BC. And from there, I just kind of started working in addiction, and I was completely ignorant to addiction before I started working in it. I don't have any addiction in my family. I don't have any frame of reference. So I remember so clearly when AJ would come home and kind of tell stories about work and whatever, and he would kind of just open my eyes to the fact that this is embarrassing on my part, but not every person who struggles with addiction is homeless on the street.
Right. Yeah, of course.
And I remember when I heard that and it really sunk in, and I was like, wait, what? I'm completely ignorant. At least I was.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
No,
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think it's helpful. What I love about what you're saying is there's something about ignorance is an okay word because it's just admitting that we've not come
didn't
in
know.
contact.
Yeah.
Or I think maybe closer to what Jesus is saying even here is like we haven't humanized the other enough to see that there's actually a real human behind an addiction. We just have like a stereotype that we just sort of label and throw out there. And it's just easy to live under the guise of those stereotypes because we have this picture in mind and we don't know any addicts, and
Right.
so we just sort of live in that space. And then you begin to do work with people who have struggled with addictions, or you have people in your life. Like my brother was a drug addict for 18 years. I love programs like the Dream Center. He's been sober for about 4 months now, the longest stint he's ever done in his adult life.
Amazing.
And I can just tell you, it is hard. Like there are stigmas that exist because to stick with people and to love your neighbor when they've robbed you. My brother robbed us. He stole things that were prized possessions of mine. And I think to keep humanizing him and see that he is not his addiction is really important. Like there's a human there who's under the clutches of something. It's like that's not who he is. But he's come to believe that's who he is. And so people who are, what I love too, what you're saying, what I love about this, the landowner goes out to find these people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like the parable doesn't say the landowner needs more workers.
No.
Presumably, he's a kingdom business owner who understands that he has a lot of money and he can offer people opportunity.
Yeah.
And so he's just going out to find them. And I think that's beautiful. Like, who are those people that we can go out and find and invite to come,
Right.
And to work.
Yeah, exactly. Not to just hand out charity and just to say, all right, here's a pat on the back, here's some money, we'll see you later.
Yeah, well, let's chat about that because
Yeah,
I think that's a popular notion right now. With the idea of maybe something like a universal basic income, or with the CERB that's being given.
Socialism.
There's so many people who are afraid of the
Karl
nasty
Marx.
M word, Marxism, and socialism, and let's chat about that because
Norway.
what I love about what you're doing. Is what the landowner is doing in this parable is he's finding people and he's giving them work. And there's nothing wrong like to give to people who are in need, absolutely.
Certainly not.
But as humans, work comes before the fall. And we're meaning-making agents. Like I think we need work and we need to make meaning. So I think even better than just giving money away, maybe we're seeing here this idea of like providing work and then giving people that fair wage. Can you guys chat about that? Because that's clearly what you're doing.
Yeah, and one of the vision statements for the Dream Center is restoring dignity. So I feel like this piece kind of comes along that.
Yes.
It's not really a political discussion for us. It's more about restoring the dignity of the person that walks through the door by providing them opportunities to live out their God-given
that's amazing.
purpose.
Yeah.
The next one is recovering dreams. And so we find a lot of them when they come through the door, there's so much shame, they forget what it's like to work and feel productive and proud of themselves. And so even while they're in program, they are doing chores, they are taking ownership of their lives.
Wow.
And I think that gives them just this sense of purpose and value that we couldn't actually give them on our own. Like they needed to take ownership of that.
Yeah.
And so I think social enterprise kind of falls into that. When we're not going to pop, everyone into wood shop if they're not passionate about wood shop. Right?
Terrible at working with
You're not
wood.
doing enforced labor
No.
here.
No.
We're talking about providing opportunities for people to work, yes?
Yes, and opportunities they're passionate about and fall into line with what their futures hold
Sure.
as well.
Yeah.
And I don't think that wealth and what am I trying to say here? Wait. I don't think you have to say, we're not going to make any money, we're going to give it all away in order to help people, actually. I don't think wealth and helping people and giving people opportunity are mutually exclusive at all. I actually think they're an incredible pairing when you think, okay, we're going to maximize profit, but we're actually going to maximize our social impact as well.
Amazing.
And we're going to tie those two together in a way that just makes sense, because sky's the limit in making profit. The more profit we make, the more people we help. Sky's the limit in the social impact we can do through social enterprise. We can give, if we're making a ton of money, we can be giving a ton of jobs.
Yeah, of course.
They can just go together so hand in hand. I just think that's the thing about like kingdom business. That's the thing about being someone who loves the Lord and who wants to live Christ-centered. That's where we can kind of pair with the kingdom and just make a lot of impact.
Yeah. I love it too, because clearly this guy has a lot of money.
Clearly.
The guy who's going out and finding laborers he does not need clearly has a lot of money.
Right.
And, you know, we were chatting about this before, and I think I just want to say it, because part of what we've been talking about in these parables is that Jesus is always offering a third way. He's not saying it's left or it's right. He's actually saying there's a place in the middle. God is somewhere else. He's not just in one of these two camps that we place him in. And I think here, too, I see the same, and I hear it in what you're saying. It's not just capitalism. It's not, let's just make all the money we can for the sake of getting richer and richer and richer and the poor getting poorer. But sometimes when we think that, we think, oh, well, making money is bad. But making money is not bad, because making money creates more job opportunities, like you're saying, and that's how a capitalistic market works. There's nothing wrong with that. And yet with socialism, we would say that, you know, it's the other end of this, where it's like, you know, let's give equal wage, let's like create opportunity for people who maybe don't have the credentials that other people might have. And so I actually see a third way even here in this parable. And in what you're saying, it's like, it's not capitalism and it's not socialism, it's a Jesus way. And the Jesus way is to say we can make a big profit and create jobs. And the more we do here, the more then we can impact our community and our society. I think that's incredible.
Yeah. And I think the thing that I take out of this passage too is that, again, in regards to what you are doing, you are giving people a second chance or a third or a thousandth chance to say, no, you still have value, you still have purpose. Who knows what those workers are doing the rest of the day while they're just chilling, hanging out, doing nothing, but yet somebody went and pursued them and gave them a second opportunity to, again, engage in their life, engage in work, engage in contributing to society in a meaningful way, and you guys provide that. And I think that's something that we oftentimes don't do, even in the Christian world, I'll say it, or in just in general. It's like once you've messed up once, you're done.
Yeah.
You know, you're done. You know, think about all the people that have come in and out of prison that have the most difficult time finding jobs. It's not just addictions. It's so much more than that. Oh, you lied at work. Oh, you did this. You did that. And we are just like, halt. I'm not engaging with you. You broke my trust. You did this. You did that. And the master, again, he goes after those people that obviously they weren't skilled enough for something to get work at 8 a.m.
Yeah, maybe, or they weren't there. You know,
Sure.
Maybe these are
That too.
And this is something to be considered, right, as we think through the parable. Like maybe these people slept in till noon.
Yeah.
And,
They were up
and
gaming
then they're
last
just
night.
hoping to get a job. Or maybe they're people who have wasted time and they've wasted resources when they should have been, as we would say, you should have been up early and you should have been working, and it's your fault that you have become an addict. And for those of us who actually know addicts, it's like, well, these situations
know
and
their
circumstances are far more complicated than this. We think
absolutely.
about family of origin, and we think about, you know, society and structures and where people come from. And I even think about the compounding issues in my own life and my own family of origin. My brother was a little bit older than me. And the way that the abuse and those things actually impacted him were different than the way that they impacted me. So for me to just say, it's your fault that you ended up here, it's a very arrogant, privileged statement to make, actually.
Yeah.
Instead of, like you're saying, to humanize and to say, what does it look like to come alongside? And I know for my brother, too, getting work is hard. And part of that is like, yeah, he does have habits that he's curated that are negative. And he does, there are things that have happened that have socially conditioned him to be a certain kind of person. Sure. And when I think of programs like this, I think, wow, like inviting people in to make a wage, like helping them learn those skills that maybe they need to learn. So maybe chat about that. Like, what is in terms of the programs and like helping people along? You know, what are the more practicals of what that looks like in terms of what you're doing on the day to day? Not just the program, but just how you're working with people in social enterprise. Love to hear about that.
Well, our wood shop has our clients come in twice
Shout
a week
out
as
Cliff.
part of programs.
We love Cliff.
We love Cliff.
Cliff is
Feel
great.
you.
Very talented. So they come and they kind of discover if this is a skill they want to learn, but it also just gets them working with their hands. So there's kind of a twofold there.
Yeah.
And a lot of them will say they feel like they've like worked out some of the things they've been thinking about in program in the wood.
Oh,
So,
hitting
like,
nails.
yeah, it's a bit more of a creative venture.
What's
And
that
so,
mic, bro?
Sorry, my bad. My
all
bad. My bad.
Justin's yelling over here.
Yeah,
in the corner.
sorry, studio producer Justin. My bad.
Sorry, keep going, Rachel.
So it's not just with the goal of employing them, but also giving them a creative outlet to learn. We have also had skilled carpenters come through and be hired from us to help out. And they really enjoy it. And most often they get hired out again because they are almost too skilled for us. But it actually shows them what it looks like to work in a safe environment, because the environments they've been in have been toxic and often fed into the addiction. So I think even providing that safe workspace, what it looks like to have a positive workspace, what it looks like to be encouraged, what grace looks like, getting to really just be Jesus to them.
Yeah.
Because even though we're a faith-based organization, it doesn't mean that they might choose that path. But the
course.
more opportunities we have to show them the love of Him,
Right.
like the better. So
Absolutely.
That's
yeah, and then for Change is Good, I mean, we're not quite there yet, but the goal is to employ. The goal is to have a retail store
You
one
need a
day.
job, Cody?
I'm good, actually.
Okay, just checking.
I have several. Thanks so much. I have too many jobs, though. A $0 a year salary.
Yeah.
So try to beat that. Plus benefits,
Yeah, exactly.
obviously.
No benefits.
Oh, I know that's the joke. Yeah.
And I
Church
think
planning life.
I think too, like if you look at a job like a barista or a retail clerk, you might think like, oh, you should aspire for better than that. But they need that step to get the confidence to take the
Right.
next one.
And in Portland, a barista is like the upper echelon of careers. It's like, oh yeah, you're a barista? Wow, that's legit.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I would speak to that as well. Having worked and managed employees who have struggled with addiction in their life, there is a tension in social enterprise. That tension comes when your employee says, nope, can't do it today. And then you're like, okay. And, you know, there's some things that don't fly in normal work
Right.
environments that have to fly
Yeah.
in social enterprise work context because, you know, we are providing that safe space. And in any interview process that I've been a part of with our clients who are applying to work in any of our social enterprises, we've kind of communicated to them like, this is a safe space for you to go through. This is another step in your recovery. And you need to know that everything you bring, whether it be good, whether it be bad, is okay, and we'll work through it. And that's not to say everything flies, because I'm also the kind of person that's like, you want to be holding people to a standard. Because you're doing absolutely nothing for people if you're saying, you know, that's good enough. Yeah, that's good enough. No, that doesn't work. You have to hold people to a standard. And
Come on, Heather.
sorry, I get a little
Come on,
heated.
Heather.
Come on.
I know that I've had like so many different opportunities to be really actually hard on our clients to say like, no, I actually think you could do
Call
so
them higher.
much better than this.
exactly.
And those have been also just like incredibly powerful moments
Yeah.
for myself and then also for those clients.
Right.
Having those tough conversations saying like, no, you are better than this. You can do better than this. And they appreciate it. And I think it's like, yeah, just providing that safe environment where they know, you know what you bring is okay, but we're gonna work through that to make you just move even more forward in your recovery.
Right.
And I think that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when we think about justice, when we think about our cultural moment, obviously immediately race comes to mind, and for good reason.
Absolutely.
When we think of, you know, social unrest in relation, you know, to these things, the way Black communities have been treated, particularly in America, but Indigenous communities in Canada. I mean, we've been talking about this. You know, I think one of the things that gets missed in that conversation sometimes is those of addiction or lower socioeconomic status that sort of get left behind. That we're not talking about racism at this point, but we are talking about putting people on the outside and
Classism.
saying like, yeah, there's a kind of classism, and then there's a kind of like, because you've had an addiction, you know, you're less than. And we wouldn't call that racism, but it is on equal part with
For
the
sure.
dehumanizing piece, right?
Exactly.
And so I see that both in the parable, but also in what you're doing. And I think it's incredibly important. That we just think clearly, like you were saying about even the Dream Center's goals, about like humanizing the other. And in this case, it really does relate to, you know, what does it look like to go out and use the resources we have to aid others, you know? So I wonder, maybe unlikely because our crowd is pretty young, but we have a lot of future business owners that attend Tehillah. We have a lot of future CEOs that attend Tehillah. What does it look like to be a follower of Jesus that is a CEO or runs an organization?
It's a great question.
Because, yeah, maybe right now we think, I just spent my last $20. I don't got it. You know, like that's where you are as a 22-year-old. Ironically, you have $20 and you're still going to Monogram, but that's good.
Absolutely.
Support Monogram.
$7 cap.
We love Monogram. But, you know, I wonder, like, that's not indicative of future, right?
Right.
So when we think about the way these stories relate to
Right.
business owners we know now, but also future business owners.
I think something that Rachel and I just chatted about briefly before this conversation was creativity and God-given creativity. I would consider myself a pretty creative person, but I'm not like
Certainly.
painting or like
yeah, of
a
course.
classically creative, actually. But I think that God's given me the creativity to look at business and pivot and kind of make a way in business that's not normal, but that's using that God-given creativity and heart for people. I think that's really where it lies down. That's where it lies, is that I have a God-given heart for people, and I also feel like I've been given the skills in business. So the root of what I do comes from that place, from that heart for people that is only from the Lord. So.
Yeah, I'd agree. The first thing I would say is ask the Lord to reveal the heart of the person to you. I think the one thing people don't realize about those who are on the journey of recovery is they have worked so hard to get there.
Yeah.
They are probably more self-aware than you. They probably know their triggers better than you know your own.
Of course.
And don't see your sins as less than their addiction. Honestly, the Father loves us all. We're all equal before him. And I think getting rid of that entitlement
Yeah.
and putting yourself in their shoes and having compassion
Getting a
will
heart.
totally change your heart.
Yeah.
I know one thing the Lord kind of put on my life a long time ago was to employ the unemployable. And I never really understood what that meant until I got into this field. And I just see that those we marginalize as unemployable actually have great ability. And if you're willing to lay yourself down and your own goals down, and like Heather said, pivot, and just work with them, you'll see greater fruit than you will if you're trying to move them to a vision that isn't from the Lord and doesn't actually suit their skill set and their gifts.
Yeah.
That'll
That's so good.
preach. I remember I was with a mentor of mine back in Portland. He told me this story that out of his like basically small group, a bunch of punk kids in young life, one of them became like a professional MLB player. One of them became a judge. One of them became like the right-hand man to Stephen Furtick at Elevation Church. A bunch of other very like upper echelon, supposed like leaders. And they were just a bunch of stinky kids at that point, junior highs. And what he told me was
kids.
like, hey, invest into them like they're going to be the next president, the next CEO, the next Hollywood film star, the next whatever, and you may not know what they're going to be, but again, they have potential that God, and if you give them a chance, and if you believe in them, and if you do that, and I think for your question of like, what do you, all the young, you know, future CEOs, future whatever that are here now, if you can model and shape your life after investing into people like they are going to be that, and you see the potential in them, and you see the God-given gifts that they have, if you can shape your life around those things now versus like, oh, once I get money, then I'm going to like do these nice things for people. I always tell all our leaders, who you are with no money is who you'll be with money.
That's true.
So to those future CEOs that are watching now, start shaping your life around those things now. The people that, again, are unemployable or unfriendable or in the corner or the person that we overlook. Find those people now in your life and start shaping and molding your life around serving that demographic. And then when you become a CEO, my goodness, it'll already be in your rhythm.
Yeah,
It'll already be in your DNA because you've been doing it
Yeah,
since you were
fantastic.
teenager or 20. So that's what I would say.
That's so good. Okay, before we sort of start to land the plane, 2 more places I want to go. I want to come back to the grumbling. We have people who are angry that other people are getting treated with equity and equality, which is fascinating. The word for grumbling in the Greek is the same word we see through the whole of the scriptures. It's the same as the Israelites grumbling in the wilderness, and that's just the theme that sort of plays out through the scriptures that Matthew is, clearly riffing on. Jesus is clearly riffing on in this moment. I wonder what it looks like then. Psychologists might call it positive reinforcement with clients, but what does it look like to celebrate others? And maybe how does that tangibly work itself out, both in this ministry, but also like just celebrating? I think we're so bad at this because I think we want the opportunity. Like we live in a cultural
they
moment.
got that raise.
We do. We live in
They
a
got
cultural
that
moment that says like
promotion.
your ego is the most important. You need to go in and self-discover your own ego. Ironically, our rabbi says die to your ego, but that's another story for another day. I just wonder, like, so often we think, oh, I was more qualified, or I wanted that, or this or that, Maybe what
worked
advice do you
harder.
have for that person? Or on the other side of it, how are you celebrating, clients and what they're doing and just the beautiful journey that they're on? I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's just seeing people.
Yeah.
Something that has happened recently in our workplace that has been like really, really powerful to me is there's a guy who's in our program and he was given the chore of changing garbages. Okay. So when you consider all the tasks in the world, it's not the most glamorous, but it needs to be done. And I remember so vividly, and I feel like the Lord's just like highlighted in my brain because I just think it's powerful. He walked into the office and he refused to look at me. And when our clients will walk into our office to do chores or whatever, I will always try and say hello. Like I don't have a ton of client-facing opportunities, so I often, will make a point of like saying hello when I pass in the halls and stuff like that. So he walked into our office and I just said, greeted him, and he wouldn't look me in the eye. He just goes, hi. And then that's it. Changed our garbages, and out he goes. And then time passes, and he's doing our garbages every single day, and he's getting, more and more confident. And now I actually can't get him out of our office because he's just like chatting on and on and on. And you'll never guess what I did this weekend. And like, then I went in on this overnight or like weekend away or whatever. He's just telling me all about his life. I went to my mom. I saw my mom. I'm like, this is great, but I have to go to work at some point. But I think it's so incredibly powerful to even just celebrate those moments. So often I'll just kind of say, like, honestly, what would I do without you? Like, you are performing such a service in this building and just celebrating it, and it just makes him feel so valued and helpful. And he got mad and was like, I'm not doing the garbages anymore recently. And every time I see him in the hall, I'm like, Don, when are you coming back? Because we need you. Yeah. And then the following week, he's like, okay, you guys needed me, so I'm back and I'm here. And I'm like, that's incredible. Thank you for doing that. And I think it really just comes down to seeing people and being like,
That's good.
and giving them that like celebration and just recognizing what they're doing. And I did at one point say, like, do you know when you walked into this office originally, you wouldn't look at me? And he's like, yeah, it's crazy, like what recovery can do for you. And I'm like, this is incredible. And that's what I would speak to that.
I love that. That's good.
And I think just to always keep in mind that God's a redemptive God. I know that so often you can look at a client and like their past survival skills that maybe weren't used for good are very apparent. But then you also see how brilliant they are and you see the redemptive qualities and you start to call those out. And it's amazing. They are smart, they are capable, they are brilliant, and just choosing to see it that way. And I think also just not choosing to see yourself above them. I think that's really huge. I think like to what James said, I often think that they can go far beyond what I could ever do with the gifts they've been given. And so.
And that's it, when you really just believe that, this is God's son, this is God's daughter. He had a plan for their life, still does. And there's potential. I'm here to pull the gold out of that person. That's man, when you see that, you can easily celebrate it because
Totally.
if they win, I win.
Exactly.
If they win, I win. If they lose, I'm losing, actually.
In
because-
grumbling, I think that's what they fail to see,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's like actually their family can
Well,
be
you got
fed
paid
now
too,
for
let's
about
go.
3 to 6
Exact-
days
Yeah.
from a
Yeah.
denarius.
Yeah.
Their
Yeah.
whole family can be fed.
Yeah.
So it's like
That's
it's not
amazing.
about like me being concerned that like I didn't get more. I should actually be celebrating that we all got enough.
Exactly.
And I feel like that's part of what Jesus is getting at here. I want to talk about one more thing as we sort of land the plane. We live in a cultural moment where I think there's a lot of conversation about equality, as there should be. And equality is a key conversation point in this parable. Jesus is clearly saying in the kingdom of God, there's an equality of opportunity, for sure. One of the things that's an interesting talking point, though, is I think we want to force sometimes an equality of outcome. Do you know what I'm talking about here? So what I mean by that is this, is like we're all different. We all have different skill sets and we perform differently. And sometimes we might get angry. So for example, I'm terrible at math. And I'm not really a
Same.
business
Me too,
person.
brother.
So, if Rachel makes more money than me in a field of business, which she would, by the way, because I'm not a business
'Cause she's
person,
a
that's not really what I
boss.
do. Exactly.
Got the power
Maybe I would
blazer on.
complain about that because our outcomes are not the same. And so I think part of the conversation has been misguided, maybe on a cultural level, and even in the church, where I think what we really long for, and what you're talking about here with Change is Good, is an equality of an opportunity. You're not saying every client is going to become the same person or get the same amount of money or the same goals. So I just think that's an important thing for us to close with, like to say, in the kingdom of God, everyone is on equal playing field for opportunity, and our outcomes are going to be different, and that's okay. And it's important and it's valuable. No one should be without, but at the same time, we should all get that equality of opportunity. So I just want to say thank you. Like, thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for creating
Absolutely.
opportunities. And I say that as somebody, and this is in no way like I know better than others, but as somebody who has lived alongside an addict for most of my life. He's a part of the Exodus program in Lethbridge. Similar style programs what the Dream Center is doing, actually. And it's been, to use another Exodus word, liberating for him. It's been salvific for him, actually. And he's met Jesus. He was baptized. All sorts of things have happened since he's entered into this program. And it's truly a miracle. But I'm grateful because I think for me as a family member, it's hard because I'm a family member. And I think sometimes we have to accept that, and that there have been other people like the Dream Center or like you in people like my brother's lives that can have a voice and have impact. So maybe like a piece of advice for people when it comes to supporting social enterprises or working alongside social enterprises, maybe that's where we could land this.
Yeah.
Of like, how can people come alongside Change is Good? How can they support
Exactly.
you or other social enterprises?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we are looking for clothing donations.
Come
and we're going to
on.
have a box here at First Assembly soon. The date will come out on social media.
Great.
So that's one way you can support us. And we're actually just starting to open the door for volunteer opportunities.
Sweet.
So if you want to email changeisgoodyyc@gmail.com and you have an interest in working alongside us, eventually we'll be bringing our clients a bit more on board as the COVID procedures or prevention procedures lessen, and want to work alongside these clients and actually see how amazing they are. That's also an opportunity that is coming up.
Wow.
And I would say just look for it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think actually social enterprises and organizations that are doing good with business exist in Calgary. Research it, find them, support them.
Yeah.
Change is Good is obviously an easy one to support because you're just buying clothes. And our wood shop as well, if you want to like buy furniture. Cliff
Come
does
on.
an incredible job.
Yes, he does.
But I would just say look for it. That's almost
good.
as simple as
No, I
that.
love it.
Come on.
Yeah, I think too, I mean, to land it, I mean, clearly this is what the kingdom of God is like. The kingdom of God is like taking a seedy hotel that apparently had hot tubs in the basement, asking the owner, or the seedy strip club rather, asking the owner of this strip club what he wants, his destiny and legacy to be, purchasing that place, purchasing land, and then inviting people to come and work. The kingdom of heaven is like the Dream Center,
Come on.
actually. And I'm not just saying that because you're here. I mean,
Yeah.
really, I think you could
Yeah.
insert everything we've talked about today
Yeah.
into this parable.
Yeah.
And I think it would make equal sense to the points that Jesus is trying to make about what it looks like when the kingdom comes. So thank you.
Come
Thank
on.
you for what you're doing.
Well, thank you, ladies. What an honor. Is there a website, Dream Center website they can go check it out at?
There's definitely an Instagram page for Change is Good.
that too.
Yeah, Change is Good YYC on Instagram and changeisgoodyyc.com to shop. And CalgaryDreamCenter.com
Yep.
Boom.
for the Calgary Dream Center.
All the information is there. And again, if you want to sow into their ministry, continue to do that. Get involved. I know some of you are already involved with the Dream Center, but continue to bring friends, bring clothes, be involved as we're doing that. And on the 19th of October, before our worship night from 1 to 6 p.m., we're having a little pop-up shop in the foyer
Our first ever.
at First Assembly. Going to be lit. You might see some of my old clothes there. I don't know. I think I have nice
It's
clothes.
women's only,
It's only
so.
women's.
Okay, never
Yeah.
mind. Never mind.
Maybe some of Karina's old
Yeah,
clothes.
exactly. Some of Karina's old clothes,
Which are your clothes also.
Yeah,
Yeah, great.
we are
Yeah.
one, right?
Yeah, you got
Amen.
it.
All
Amen.
right.
Amen.
But if you also want to sow into Tehillah, make sure that you go to our website. You can give there and help us further what we're doing here in the city. So thank you, ladies. Thank you, Cody.
Yeah.
Thank you, all of our production team.
Yeah, thanks,
Landon, Justin, Cole, Jess.
Jer Rustin.
Jer, you just ordered the lights. I was about to say Jer. I'm like, I shouldn't say Jer. No, you ordered the lights. So like Jer, Marissa, and Angel, what an honor. Love you guys. Have a great day.
See you soon.